James McCune Smith, black physician, born 1813, died 1865. The first African American to practice medicine with a medical degree in the U.S., James McCune Smith was also the first black person to own and operate a pharmacy. He was best known, however, as an essayist and an orator. Throughout his career, he lectured in support of the abolition of slavery and produced medical evidence against misleading information on the physical, mental, and intellectual traits of blacks. Smith was born during the era of slavery on April 18, 1813, in New York City. His father was a former slave freed by New York's Emancipation Act, and his mother was a self-emancipated bondswoman. The country's first black physician began his education at the African Free School in New York City. Unable to pursue a college education in the U.S., Smith attended the University of Glasgow in Scotland, where prejudice based on color was comparatively unknown. There, he received his bachelor's degree in 1835, his master's degree in 1836, and his medical degree in 1837. Upon his return to the U.S., Smith received a triumphant welcome from New York's black residents. About the event, William C. Nell wrote in Colored Patriots of the American Revolution, quote, Ransom F. Wake, in their behalf, congratulated Smith on having passed 5 years in a land where a man's a man, without regard to his complexion, where the gentleman, the scholar, the Christian, and the patriot did not restrict their benevolence to geographic limits, nor to the mean, degrading, illiberal, detestable, and unholy distinction of color which prevails in our otherwise happy land. Unquote. In response, Smith told the crowd, quote, I have striven to obtain education at every sacrifice and every hazard, and to apply such education to the good of our common country. Unquote. He began practicing medicine in New York in 1838 after studying in the clinics of the Paris Hospital in France. A short time later, Smith opened a pharmacy on West Broadway, considered to be the first pharmacy in the nation owned and operated by an African American. Smith spent 25 years as a physician, mainly as a staff member of the Free Negro Orphan Asylum. Although his practice was successful, he is better known for his essays and his anti-slavery activities. Smith frequently spoke and wrote against slavery, as well as the American Colonization Society, which was formed to repatriate blacks to Africa. He was prominently involved in the New York connection of the Underground Railroad, which helped escaped slaves from the South gain freedom in the North and Canada. His writings and lectures against slavery were often controversial, but scientifically sound. One of his first reported speeches was delivered at the annual meeting of the American Anti-Slavery Society in 1838, which included a summary of abolition activities in England and France. Smith was a contributor to anti-slavery publications, including The Emancipator and The Liberator. In an 1844 essay, Freedom and Slavery, originally published in the New York Tribune, he responded to claims made by the Reverend O. Dewey that the slaves of the South were happier than the free Negroes of the North. Smith provided statistics to disprove Dewey's theory. In another well-known incident, John C. Calhoun and others made assertions about black health and insanity. Their claims were based in part on an 1840 census report that noted a high rate of black lunacy, but Smith used his knowledge of medicine to refute these accusations in a reply entitled The Influence of Climate Upon Longevity. He also proved that arguments regarding the small size and weight of the Negro brain were false. Equality for blacks was a recurring theme in many of his essays and speeches. In 1849, he wrote on the equal school rights question in Boston, quote, "It has ever been my solemn conviction that separate organizations of all kinds based upon the color of the skin keep alive prejudice against color, and that no organizations do this more effectually than colored schools." Unquote. Smith wrote the introduction of Frederick Douglass's second autobiographical work, My Bondage and My Freedom, which was published in 1855. In the introduction, Smith stated, quote, "It is an American book for Americans in the fullest sense of the idea. It shows that the worst of our institutions, in its worst aspect, cannot keep down energy, truthfulness, and earnest struggle for the right. It proves the justice and practicability of immediate emancipation." Unquote. Smith also wrote a more than 60-page introduction to Henry Highland Garnett's a memorial discourse, delivered in the House of Representatives, which was published in 1865. Smith received an appointment as professor of anthropology at Wilberforce University in 1863. However, poor health kept him from teaching. Suffering from heart disease, Smith died at his home in Williamsburg, New York, on November 17, 1865. He is survived by his wife and 5 children. He was survived by his wife and 5 children. Citations are in the description.